The head of security screamed, "Get out! You don't belong here," then kicked the old black janitor out in front of everyone. What no one knew, that same janitor had just signed the papers to buy the entire building. By the next morning, the guard worked for him, and the world learned. Never disrespect the man holding the mop. He might be holding the deed too. He pointed straight at my face, fingers shaking with rage, eyes burning like I had just spat on the flag. "Get out. You don't belong here." His voice sliced through the marble hallway, loud enough to stop a conversation 20 feet away. Everyone turned. They all saw it. They all heard it. But not one person moved. Not one voice rose in protest. I stood there, hands still holding the mop, feet damp with bleach water, heart thumping like a war drum. My name is Elijah Whittaker. I am 67 years old. African American. Widowed. I wear the same gray janitor shirt every day, tucked into black slacks that barely hold their shape anymore. My shoes are cracked. My hands rough like old tree bark from decades of scrubbing floors that none of these people ever thought to look down at. And yet, for 32 years, I have cleaned the lobby of the Alder Ridge corporate tower like it was my home. Because for me, in many ways, it was, until today. The man screaming at me was Brett Langley. Mid-30s, tall, white, muscular, a rent-a-cop with a chip on his shoulder the size of a broken marriage, chief of building security, self-proclaimed king of this glass kingdom. His shirt was tight on purpose, 2 buttons undone, badge shine to a blinding polish. He stormed toward me now, like a bull charging a red flag. "I told you yesterday, stay out of the executive floor." He barked, knocking over the yellow, wet floor sign with a loud crack. "You think you can sneak in after hours, and no one would notice. You are a janitor. Old man, know your place." I did not flinch. Not once. I just looked him in the eye, calm, silent, because I remembered what my late wife, Gloria, used to tell me when I came home tired and aching from the night shift. "Hold your head high, Elijah," she would whisper, even when the world stoops low. But it was not easy now. Not when people stared. Not when a woman in a pencil skirt covered her mouth, like she had just seen something dirty. Not when 2 young interns I would once helped change a flat tire stepped back into the elevator without even a glance. I did not touch the executive floor. I finally said, voice steady, "I mopped the lobby. That is my schedule. You calling me a liar?" Brett sneered, stepping closer. "I am saying your assumption is incorrect." That is when he did it. He took his clipboard, the symbol of his little power trip, and smacked it hard against my mop bucket, sending the water flying in an arc across the pristine lobby tiles. It splashed my pants, soaked my shoes. A few droplets hit the edge of the receptionist's desk. The silence afterward was deafening. He leaned in, just inches from my face now. "Pick that up. Then get the hell out. You are banned. I see you here again. I will have you arrested for trespassing." I stood still, not out of fear, but because something inside me shifted. For years I let moments like this slide. The ignored greetings, the smirks, the times I was called boy by executives young enough to be my grandchildren. But this time, Something inside me said, "No more." So I bent down slowly, not to pick up the mop, but to retrieve something that had slipped from my inner pocket when he hit the bucket. It was a thin manila folder, labeled in sharp black letters, "Acquisition Offer, Whittaker Group Holdings." I saw it there, lying next to the puddle. Brett did not even notice. No one did. I picked it up gently, dried it with my sleeve, slid it back into my coat, and without another word, I turned and walked away. People moved aside as I passed, like I was contagious, like dignity was a disease. But they did not know. They did not know that 5 days ago, I had signed paperwork to buy the entire Alder Ridge corporate tower. Every marble tile, every glass panel, every executive office. Brett swore I was not good enough to enter. They did not know that I own controlling shares in 3 of the companies headquartered inside. They did not know that the man they just humiliated was their future landlord, and that tomorrow morning, everything would change. Forever, I stepped outside, the sunlight hitting my face, the cold wind brushing past my wet slacks. But I felt warm, because for the first time in decades, I was not just surviving. I was about to take it all back. With grace, with power, and with the quiet dignity of a man who never needed to shout to be heard. Tomorrow, I would walk back into that building in a black tailored suit. And Brett, he would learn who truly did not belong, not because of skin, not because of station, but because of heart. And mine was bigger than any building money could ever buy. They think I started as a janitor. They think the mop was always mine. They are wrong. I laid the first foundation brick of this building with my own 2 hands. I was 24, just back from the military, full of calluses, ambition, and hope. Alder Ridge was just blueprints and bulldozers, then a promise of progress in a corner of the city everyone used to ignore. It was 1989. The air smelled like wet concrete and diesel. I was on a construction crew working 12-hour shifts for minimum wage, stacking steel, pouring cement, crawling into ventilation shafts where others would not fit. They paid me peanuts, but I did not care, because every night when I walked home with aching feet and dust in my lungs, I looked up at that growing tower and thought, one day, this building will know my name. But time is funny. It does not wait. 1 year turned into 5, 5 into 15. Somewhere between pouring rooftop gravel and patching drywall, the crew was let go. The contractors said that they would bring in new teams, younger guys, lighter payroll. I remember shaking hands with my supervisor and saying thank you like a fool. That same week, I took the only job I could get, janitorial. Night shifts. No benefits. Same building. Different badge. Instead of laying concrete, I cleaned it. People forgot I was ever a builder. I became invisible. The guy in the gray shirt with the mop. No one asked about my past. No one knew I could read blueprints better than most of the architects. They only saw what they wanted to see. There is something you learn after years of being ignored. You start listening to what people say when they think no one important's around. I heard secrets in elevator shafts, caught whispers in restroom stalls, Watched office politics unfold from behind tinted glass. I cleaned every day. I watched men rise and fall. Watched interns become managers. Watched managers turn into tyrants. And I kept sweeping. They did not know I kept a notebook in my locker. Every night I would write down ideas, business concepts, notes on real estate, what tenants complained about most. I watched which companies stayed, which ones packed up. I tracked leases. Watched the stock market after mopping up vomit from Christmas parties. I educated myself while people laughed behind my back. Then came the moment that changed everything. My wife, Gloria, was diagnosed with cancer. Stage 4. The doctors said we did not have much time. She never cried. Not once. She just looked at me and said, "Promise me something. Elijah. Promise you will make them see you." Those words became my mission. She passed away 6 months later. I buried her with my military medals and her church necklace. She never got to see what I was building. But from that day on, I was not just mopping floors. I was building an empire. I started Whitaker Group Holdings with every cent we had saved. At first, I bought tiny duplexes on the edge of town, fixed them up, rented them. Then came the laundromats, then 2 small warehouses, then a medical office building in 2019, right before the market boomed. The funny thing about silence, it compounds, just like interest. Every year I was ignored. I gained. Every time they looked past me, I saw more. And yet, I never stopped working here, never left Alder Ridge, because I made a promise to Gloria to stay humble, to never forget the floor I started on. Even after I crossed the 7-figure mark, I still showed up every morning at 6 a.m. Gray shirt, mop, smile. I think part of me loved that no one suspected, that they underestimated me, that they gave me no attention, because attention is the one thing you can weaponize without ever lifting a finger. Until Brett came. He was different. The others were ignorant. But Brett was mean. He did not just look through me. He hated that I was here, hated that I did not cower, that I stood tall even when silent. He started random checks, delayed my elevator access, gave me dirty assignments during his shift on purpose. He did not know my name, but he knew I would not fight back, because who fights for a janitor, right? But that morning, when he kicked me out in front of the entire lobby, something snapped, not in anger, but in readiness. Because 2 days before that scene, I had just signed the papers. The building was mine. $38.6 million. Fully acquired. Transferred under Whitaker Group Holdings. All tenants retained. All leases reviewed. Brett's security contract was up for evaluation. I had already been planning a soft entrance. A quiet boardroom meeting. But not anymore. Now, he had turned it into something personal. Something public. And now, it would be poetic, because when I walk back in, I won't be holding a mop. I will be holding keys to every door he once locked me out of. This is not revenge. It is reclamation. I have cleaned this floor for 32 years. I have earned the right to own it. And soon, they will all know my name, My name is Elijah Whittaker, but nobody here knows that name. To them, I am the janitor, the old man with the mop, or sometimes just, hey, you. But none of them know who I really am, because I never gave them the satisfaction. Because in this building, where power wears a suit and respect only comes with a title, I chose to stay hidden. Until now, I live alone in a modest brownstone, 5 blocks from Alder Ridge Tower. It is not the biggest, not the flashiest, but it is mine, fully paid off since 2002. I grow tomatoes on the balcony. I still use the same kettle my wife and I got on our wedding day. The paint on the front gate is chipped, but I never fix it. Gloria liked it that way. I drive a 1998 Toyota Camry. It rattles when I hit 50 miles per hour, but it still moves. Every Sunday, I visit her grave. I sit beside her stone, rub my thumb over her name, and tell her what I have done, what I have built, because everything I have, every cent, every square foot, every signature I built with her voice in my heart, and the world will never know how much I owe her. You see, I am not just a janitor. I am a business owner, a real estate investor, a silent partner in 7 different ventures across the city. I read financial reports like others read gossip columns. I have lunch meetings in jeans and clean toilets in the afternoon. Because I never wanted the fame, just the freedom, and I got it by being underestimated. Let me tell you about Whittaker Group Holdings. I registered the company under a quiet Lelks in 2010. No flashy press release, no office space downtown. Just me, a lawyer named Stan from church, and a whole lot of ambition. I bought my first property from a man who was moving to Florida in a rush, paid $62,000 in cash I would been saving for over a decade, fixed it up myself, spent weekends retiling the kitchen, repainting walls, replacing rotten window frames, rented it out in 6 weeks. I did that again and again. Soon I was pulling in passive income. I used it to reinvest. I read every real estate book the library had, took online courses at night, watched YouTube tutorials on plumbing, roofing, negotiation. While other men drank beer and watched football, I studied the market. By 2017, I owned 16 rental units. Then I added commercial laundromats. Then a 2-story strip mall. I partnered with a local contractor named Moses. He is a genius with his hands and twice as honest as anyone I know. We flipped properties together, built 3 new structures on vacant land. I became a regular face at zoning board meetings, still wearing my janitor's uniform. Nobody suspected a thing. And I liked it that way, because every time someone ignored me, I learned. Every time someone assumed I was too poor, too tired, too black and broken, I proved them wrong. Silently, powerfully. You know the sweetest sound in the world, the click of a pen signing a deed transfer with your name on it. That is the sound I heard last Friday, when I bought the Alder Ridge Corporate Tower. The same building I helped build with my hands. The same building I mopped for 3 decades. The same building that spat me out like I did not belong. I bought it through a shell corporation, did not want the board to know yet. Let them think it was just a big investment firm. I watched the transaction go through on my old laptop, glorious photo framed right beside it. Baby. I whispered, we did it. And the first thing I did after closing the deal, I sent flowers to every single janitor in the building, no name attached, just a card that read, "Your work matters. You matter," because I never forgot where I came from, and I never will. I am not here to gloat. I am not here to punish. I am here to lead. Differently. With empathy. With grace. And yes, with power. So when I walked back into that building tomorrow, wearing a tailored black suit for the first time in years, I was not looking to make a scene. But if a scene came to me, I would meet it head-on, because the man they threw out is the man who now holds the deed. And justice. It is never loud at first, but it always echoes. His name was Brett Langley, age 32, height 6'1", ex-military. Always angry. To most people in Alder Ridge Tower, Brett was just security guy, the one with the buzz cut, tight black polo shirt, and a way of walking like every hallway was a battlefield. He carried himself like a man who had something to prove, but no one to prove it to. To me, he was more than that. He was a symbol of every man who ever looked me in the eye and did not see a man, only a uniform, only skin, only a role. And the worst part, Brett was not just arrogant. He was hollow. He was not always this way. I later found out. Once upon a time, Brett served 2 tours in Afghanistan, came back home with a limp and a medal. He tried to hold down a job with the city, but something inside him never adjusted. He got passed over for promotions. His marriage fell apart. He lost custody of his son, and the bitterness ate him alive. So he took a job that gave him a badge, a belt, a clipboard, a reason to bark orders. And at Alder Ridge, where silence reigned and most people avoided confrontation, Brett became a king with no crown. He knew every camera angle, every hallway echo. He knew which employees came in late, who stole staplers, who snuck in guests. But he did not just monitor, he judged. He did not stop threats. He hunted weaknesses. He saw kindness as a flaw, compassion as a crack in the wall. And when he saw me, he saw nothing, just an old black man pushing a mop cart. A reminder of everything he thought he was better than. You should be seen the way he strutted across the lobby floor, like a soldier patrolling occupied territory. He made receptionists flinch with just a glance. Interns whispered when he passed. Even middle managers tried to stay on his good side. Because Brett had one weapon no one else in the building had: fear. And he used it like a club. But here's what people never noticed, what I watched unfold over the years behind the reflection of my mop bucket. Brett was unraveling. Each week, his grip on control got tighter. More ridiculous rules. Petty punishments. He once suspended a janitor for leaving a rag near the elevators. He fined a delivery driver for parking 3 inches outside the painted line. He was not enforcing safety. He was demanding submission. And it was not just me he targeted. There was Luz, the elderly Filipino maintenance tech, with arthritis in both hands. Brett called him Slowpoke and reassigned him to basement boiler duty, where no one would see him. There was Cassandra, the young black receptionist, who smiled at everyone. Brett accused her of distracting guests and lobbied to move her desk behind a pillar. There was Jamal, the male clerk with headphones, who once corrected Brett on a building policy. Brett filed a non-compliance report, and slashed his building access to just one floor. But I was his favorite target. Why? Because I did not react. Because no matter what he said, I responded with a calm yes, sir, or a quiet nod. Because deep down, men like Brett do not crave power, they crave control over those who want to feed their ego. And I would not ever. But what Brett did not know was this. Every move he made was being watched, not just by the people around him, but by someone who now owned the security contract his paycheck depended on. Me. Because when I acquired the building, I acquired every contract inside it. Security, maintenance, cleaning, vending, landscaping, and I read them. Every line. I saw the clause buried deep in the terms. Service providers may be replaced without cause upon ownership transfer. One sentence. That is all I needed, but I waited. Because men like Brett do not just deserve a pink slip. They deserve perspective. I did not want revenge. I wanted truth to land like thunder. So when he screamed at me in that lobby, when he shoved over my mop bucket, when he told me to stay gone, he did not know. He had just handed me the moment I would been waiting for. The moment where the mirror would finally turn. Because the only thing more satisfying than watching a man fall is watching him realize who helped him stand all along. Tomorrow, when I walk through those front doors, not as a janitor, but as the owner, Brett's going to learn something no one ever taught him in the army or in court or in therapy. That real power is not loud. It does not threaten. It does not belittle. It builds. It lifts. And it always comes back around. It started with a stare, then a warning, then the moment he crossed the line. The morning after he kicked me out of Alder Ridge Tower, I returned not to retaliate, not to confront, but simply to retrieve the last of my cleaning supplies. The mop, the bucket, and the worn-out cloth my wife once embroidered with my name. I stepped into the side entrance, the one janitors always used. No marble, no glass chandeliers, just a narrow hallway that smelled like bleach and years of disregard. But before I even reached my locker, I heard it. Hey, Brett. He rounded the corner. Lips curled, veins popping at his temple. Junior guards stood behind him, confused and pale. I thought I made myself clear. Whitaker. He spat, chest puffed out like a rooster. You were banned. You do not step foot in this building again. You think you are special. I came for my things, I said softly. I will be gone in 5 minutes. Wrong answer. He snatched the keycard from my lanyard and tossed it to the floor like garbage. Then he reached for my cart and opened it. Rags scattered. The mop handle clattered like a gunshot against tile. My cleaning spray rolled and hit the baseboard with a hollow clink. But it was what he did next that told me everything I needed to know. He picked up the rag with my wife's embroidery. Elijah's hands, he read aloud, mocking the delicate script. What is this? Your granny-s suing project. I took one step forward. Just one. He tightened his grip on it, like daring me to lunge. I did not. I simply held out my hand. Please return it. He stared at me, then dropped it in the nearest trash can. I did not speak. Didn't he move? Didn't he blink? I reached in, gently pulled it out, folded it like silk, and placed it in my coat pocket. Then I looked at him. Really looked, and for a flicker, just a flicker, I saw it. Fear, not of me, of himself, because in that moment he realized something, that I was not afraid, that I did not yell, that I did not run, that I had something he never did. Control, the kind built from decades of quiet dignity, the kind forged in funeral pews and midnight shifts, the kind passed down by men who survived more than insults. He backed up half a step. That was all I needed. I turned and walked out. But what Brett did not know, what no one knew, was that, while he was tossing my rag into a trash can, the building's board of trustees was upstairs, meeting in silence, reviewing one document, notice of ownership transfer, from Whitaker Group Holdings to Alder Ridge Corporate Tower Laux. The deal had closed 2 nights prior. While Brett screamed and humiliated me in the lobby, I had been signing the final contracts with my legal team, while he bragged to the junior guards about banning the janitor. I was becoming his boss's boss. And now, all that was left was the reveal. But I did not want a dramatic announcement. No marching band. No media. Just one quiet moment. One morning meeting. So I scheduled it. 10:00 a.m. Friday. Executive boardroom. An asset transition presentation. Brett would be required to attend as head of security. Mandatory briefing. He did not know what he was walking into. He would walk in thinking he would file some papers. He would walk out without a job. And not because I hated him, because some lessons must be lived, to be learned. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, the contract folder in front of me, the same one that had fallen on the lobby floor during our first confrontation. I ran my fingers over the title, Acquisition Offer, Whitaker Group Holdings. Then I reached into my pocket, pulled out glorious rag, pressed it against the cover, and whispered to the empty room. Tomorrow, love, we finish what we started. The glass doors swung shut behind me with a soft click. I stood there for just a second, in silence, long enough for the 20 men and women in the Alder Ridge executive boardroom to look up. Some stared blankly. Some blinked, confused. 1 or 2 narrowed their eyes, like trying to place a memory they never cared enough to store. Not one of them recognized me. Not with this suit on. Not with the tie. Not with polished shoes instead of rubber soles and a mop handle. But oh, how I recognized them. Every face. Every voice. Every smug smirk I would once mop beneath. I nodded once and walked to the head of the table. Brett was already seated. Arms crossed, badge clipped sharp to his belt. He did not even glance at me. His attention was on the folder in front of him, the one labeled Asset Transition Meeting Mandatory Attendance. He thought he was here for a fire drill protocol, or maybe a new parking schedule. He had no idea. The CO, Gerald Luntz, a tall man with silver temples and a constant air of self-importance, cleared his throat. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here on time. We have got a major operational update today. You will want to pay close attention. Brett leaned back in his chair, smug. whispered something to the assistant beside him that made her stiffen. That is when Gerald motioned to me. "And now," he said, "I would like to introduce the man behind this transition, our new property owner and majority building stakeholder, Elijah Whitaker." Silence. It was like a vacuum sucked the air from the room. Someone coughed, a chair creaked, a coffee cup stopped midair. Then Brett finally turned. His head snapped so fast I thought his neck would crack. His mouth hung open. His eyes scanned me from my collar to my shoes, like they were trying to refute what he was seeing. "This is a joke," he mumbled. "Right?" I gave him the same calm look I had given him when he yelled at me in the lobby, only this time I spoke. "Hello, Langley. I see you brought your clipboard." I brought mine too. I held up a slim leather binder. Inside were the documents, the receipts, the signatures, the wire transfer that sealed it all. Brett stood up, fists clenched. "There is no way. I own the building." I interrupted gently, "And as of 9:01 this morning, all property management operations, security contracts, and staff oversight fall under my authority. But you are just the janitor." "No," I replied. "I was the janitor. Now I am the landlord. And your employer," gasps, a dropped pen. The assistant who deflinched earlier. Now she was hiding a grin. Brett's face flushed, bright red, like a furnace igniting beneath his skin. He lunged forward, slamming his hand on the table. "You tricked us. You pretended. I lived," I said. "You just did not look." There was a pause so thick, so wide, no one dared speak, until I turned to Gerald. "With your permission," I said, "I would like to exercise the clause under Section 7B of the security contract. Effective immediately." Gerald nodded stiffly. "It is within your right." I looked Brett in the eye. "Langley," I said calmly, "your services are no longer required. Security badges will be deactivated within the hour. You may collect your personal items by end of day." He exploded. "You can fire me. I have been here for 5 years. You think just because you got a suit and some papers, you can waltz in and take over." I stepped forward, quiet, but unshaken. "I built this building with my hands. Brett, I cleaned its floors for 3 decades. I bought it with money no one ever thought I could earn. And I did it all while men like you spat at my feet and laughed behind my back." I turned toward the board. "And now, I am here not for revenge, but for restoration." Brett looked around the room, searching for allies, for anyone to stand up for him. No one moved. The same silence he once used to bully others now stood against him. He grabbed his badge, yanked it off his belt, and hurled it onto the table. "This place is a joke," he hissed. "You are all sheep." Then he stormed out, boots heavy on the marble, like he was trying to crack it on his way down. The doors slammed shut, and just like that, the building felt different. Lighter, freer. I turned back to the board. "I do not need applause," I said. "I need cooperation." We are going to build something better here. Starting today. Then I opened my binder again, and with steady hands, began to lay out the future. A future not built on fear, but on dignity, on truth, on strength in silence, and at last on respect earned, not demanded. I walked the hallways of Alder Ridge Tower differently that day, not because my shoes were newer, not because I wore a suit tailored to my shoulders and not pulled off a clearance rack, but because, for the first time in 32 years, the air moved around me with weight. My weight. Eyes followed me, not with scorn, but with confusion, with wonder, and maybe, just maybe, with the beginning of respect. I did not nod. I did not wave. I just walked, and every step whispered the same truth. The janitor now holds the keys. When I reached the lobby, the same lobby Brett had tried to humiliate me in just days before, it was buzzing. Word had already spread, fast, like lightning through copper wire. Someone whispered, "That is him." Another, "No way, him." And then silence again when I stepped fully into view. The floor still gleamed. The front desk was freshly dusted. But something had shifted in the bones of the building. I could feel it. I approached the receptionist. Cassandra Young. Bright-eyed, always professional even when treated like a statue, she stood quickly, smoothing her blouse. "Ma. Whitaker," she said with a tremble. "Welcome." Her voice cracked on the last word, not out of fear but awe. "Thank you." "Cassandra," I said warmly. "Call me Elijah." She blinked. "You remembered my name." I smiled. "I remember when you brought soup to Louis when he was sick in the basement. I remember when Brett tried to hide your desk, and you stayed anyway. I remember everything." Her lips parted slightly. Then she did something no one had ever done in that lobby. She reached across the desk and shook my hand, firm, grateful. "Thank you, Elijah," she said. It was the beginning of something new. Then came the meeting, my first official act as the new owner. I gathered every floor manager, department head, security staff, janitor, and maintenance worker in the atrium. No boardroom, no microphones, just a man standing at the center of the place he once swept. "Some of you know me," I began, "as the man who emptied your trash cans and wiped your conference tables. That was never beneath me. It was my honor, because I believe in doing the work no one sees." I turned slowly, making eye contact with faces, some ashamed, some smiling, some still stunned. But make no mistake, I continued, this building now belongs to someone who values every person who walks its halls, not just those with titles. A murmur, a nod. Tears welled in Louis' eyes from the front row. "Effective immediately," I said. "We are restructuring the entire security department. We will be recruiting veterans not of war, but of wisdom. Men and women who know that real security is protecting people. Not power. A light round of claps. Tentative, like the first drops of rain after a drought. I was not finished. We are also reinstating 3 janitors previously terminated without cause. They will receive full back pay. And I have doubled the building's custodial budget because no empire stands without clean foundations. This time the clapping was louder. Then I stepped down from the marble ledge I had stood on and walked directly to Lewis. The man's hands still bore the tremors of years of pain and thankless nights. I reached into my coat pocket and handed him a new badge, embossed in gold. Title: Senior Facility Director. He gasped. "Elijah, you deserve it." I said, "You always did." Behind me, someone clapped again. Louder. Then another. Then everyone. Not a forced applause. Not corporate, not for show. But real, raw, human. Because they were not just seeing a janitor in a suit. They were seeing themselves in me. The years they were overlooked. The nights they cried in silence. The days they endured just to survive. And now, one of their own had made it. Not by stepping on others, but by holding the door open. When the applause died down, I spoke once more. Let this be the new rule of Alder Ridge. No one eats alone. No voice is too small. And no badge ever again will determine your worth. The silence that followed was not empty. It was full. Of pride. Of promise. And of something this building had not felt in years. Hope. It started with coffee. The same woman who once turned away when I passed her desk, Sarah. The blonde executive assistant with stilettos louder than her voice approached me at the mezzanine cafe. Her eyes darted left and right, like she did not know how to begin. Whitaker. I looked up from my laptop. I was reviewing renovation proposals for the West Wing. I smiled gently. Yes. She held out a paper cup. It trembled. Double espresso. I remembered you ordered it once, when the power went out 3 years ago. You, stayed late to help reset the breaker. I accepted the cup. Thank you. Her mouth quivered. I never said thank you for that, or for anything. I nodded once. You just did. She blinked, then turned and walked away. Shoulders stiff, like carrying a weight she would never known she would, dropped. That was the first of many. Apologies came in awkward waves. One from Tyler, the junior analyst who used to prop his shoes on the hallway bench I scrubbed every Friday. He brought a pie. Homemade. His hands shook so bad, the whipped cream smudged the lid. Another from Mez. Rachel Denning, the head of her, who once passed me 23 times in the elevator and never said good morning. She now asked to schedule a one-on-one meeting to discuss cultural sensitivity training initiatives. And then came the intern. Her name was Kayla. 21. Bright. Hopeful. Always rushing, always apologizing to everyone except me. That morning, I was walking through the atrium when I saw her sitting alone on the marble bench, face buried in her hands. "Miss Kayla," I asked softly. She looked up. Mascara streaked, her cheeks red. She stood too fast. Whitaker, I am so sorry. I should not have. I was there that day. When he yelled at you, I did not say anything. I should have. I was scared, but that is not an excuse. I let the silence hold for a moment. Then I asked, "Do you want to know what I remember about you?" She blinked. What? One night, 2 years ago, you stayed late. Missed the last train. I was mopping the north stairwell when I saw you crying. You did not have cab fare, so I gave you $20. You said you would pay it back. Her eyes widened. Oh my God, that was you. I smiled. It was never about the money. I just did not want you walking home scared. She dropped to the bench, hands trembling. I never forgot that night. I never thought the man who helped me could be the man who owned the building. I said, gently. She nodded, shame blooming across her face. I sat beside her, not as her employer, not as a man in a suit, but as Elijah. And I said the one thing I wished someone had said to me when I was young, scared, and overlooked. It is never too late to do the right thing, but do not just apologize to me. Speak up for the next Elijah before the world knows his name. Her tears fell quietly. But when she looked up again, her shoulders were stronger. That was the day I realized it was not about revenge. It never was. It was about realigning the broken compass in people's hearts. Because while some apologies were too late for me, they might be right on time for someone else. And then came the knock on my office door. It was Louis, not with a request, not with paperwork, but with a small, folded piece of cloth. "Your rag," he said, voice heavy with emotion. "I stitched it back for you. I know it is not perfect, but I opened it gently, the same cloth Brett had thrown in the trash. But now, embroidered with one extra line, beneath the original Elijah's hands, Louis had stitched, 'Built this tower, now builds us.' I did not speak. I just reached out, gripped his shoulder. We stood there, 2 old men, one with tears, the other with pride, and said nothing. Because sometimes healing does not need words. It just needs truth. And that truth was finally echoing through every floor. Monday morning arrived with the smell of fresh paint and fresh hope. For the first time in 32 years, I entered Alder Ridge Tower, not through the janitor's side entrance, but through the front door's glass spinning wide with polished grace, just like the ones I used to clean while people walked by without seeing me. Now they saw, and I did not walk alone. Louis walked beside me, his new name tag read Senior Facility Director. Cassandra flanked my left, clipboard in hand, no longer hidden behind pillars, but now head of front office relations. And Kayla, the once nervous intern, now proudly wore a pin I would personally handed her that said Voices Matter Team. It was not just titles. It was transformation. We stepped into the main atrium and stopped. I turned to them. "Are you ready?" I asked. Louis smiled. "Been ready 30 years. Cassandra nodded, fire behind her eyes. "Let us fix what they broke." I took one breath and stepped forward. The new digital screen on the marble wall blinked to life. And there, under the Alder Ridge logo, appeared 10 lines in bold gold type. Whittaker Building, core values. Every human deserves to be seen. No badge is more valuable than kindness. Dignity is not optional, it is policy. Security protects, not polices. Janitors matter. Receptionists matter. Silence is never the price of a paycheck. Speak up. Be heard. Help without asking for credit. Remember, empires fall when humility is forgotten. I turned to the crowd that had gathered, employees from every floor, every department, and every background stood shoulder to shoulder. Some wore suits, others wore uniforms, but for the first time, they were together. Today, I said, we begin again. This building was built on sweat and silence. From now on, it stands on voice and value. No one moved. Then came the claps, slow, growing, rolling through the atrium like thunder finally answering lightning. I raised a hand gently, and they quieted. We are implementing 3 new policies, I said. First, all custodial and maintenance staff will receive a 30% raise, retroactive to the date of acquisition. Gasps. Second, an anonymous reporting line for workplace harassment will be installed, operated independently of upper management, and every case will be reviewed by a diverse board. Whispers of disbelief and hope. And third, I paused, letting the silence stretch. We are removing office hierarchies in the cafeteria. No executive tables, no reserved spaces. We eat together. Because change does not just happen in boardrooms. It starts over breakfast. That was when someone shouted, "Yes," and the clapping erupted again, this time with cheers. Real cheers. But even as the energy surged, I knew not everyone would welcome the change. Power resists when it feels unthroned. And sure enough, later that day, I received an email from a longtime executive. Dear Mayor Whitaker, it began. While we appreciate your enthusiasm, your recent announcements may be viewed as disruptive to our culture. I closed it without replying, because the culture needed disrupting. At noon, I walked through the break room. For the first time, managers sat beside janitors. Senior accountant helped a new intern open a stubborn juice carton. Someone told a joke, and 3 people from 3 different floors laughed in unison. I smiled. It was beginning. After lunch, I visited the basement. The room where Brett had once banished Louis to boiler duty was now freshly painted. Plants on the windowsill, a new ergonomic chair. On the wall hung a framed plaque, in honor of every hand that built in silence. Louis choked up when he saw it. I never asked for this. He whispered. I know. I said, that is why you deserve it. That evening, as the building emptied, I stood by the front doors. I watched employees leave not just with briefcases, but with brightness in their stride, like the building itself had exhaled. And just as I was about to turn in, a young janitor approached. Couldn't he be older than 22? Nervous, skinny, calloused hands. Whitaker, he asked. Yes, I heard you used to be a janitor here. I still am. I smiled. Just do not have to mop anymore. He swallowed. Can I ask, how did you keep going all those years when no one saw you? I looked at him for a long moment. Then I said, because I saw myself, and I knew one day They would have no choice but to see me too. He nodded, eyes wide. Then, hesitantly, he held up his mop handle like a sword. I grinned and placed my hand on his shoulder. "Hold that with pride," I said. "It built more than you know." Sunlight poured through the 20-foot glass windows of Alder Ridge Tower, casting long golden beams across the newly waxed marble floor. The kind of light that makes everything look hopeful. Even history. It was my last official day. Not because I was leaving, not because anyone asked me to, but because I knew when my season had come to pass. I would planted the seeds. I would watered them. Now it was time for others to grow. I stood in the lobby, looking up at the plaque mounted just below the corporate logo. Whitaker Building, founded on labor, rebuilt by dignity. I never dreamed my name would be etched into a wall like that. I only ever dreamed of being treated like I belonged in the room. But God had different plans, and as always, Gloria had whispered them first. Outside, the city buzzed with the usual chaos sirens. Traffic, people shouting into phones. But inside these walls, something new had taken root, not just policy, but purpose. The break rooms now had rotating art walls featuring employees' children. Janitors had health benefits. Interns had mentors. The security team revamped and retrained smiled when they greeted people instead of scanning them like suspects. And me, I had one final thing to do. I carried it carefully, wrapped in cloth, the same way you might carry a baby. My broom, the original one. Wooden handle, and sanded by yours truly back in '91. Worn smooth by years of grip, the bristles frayed, uneven, but proud. At the far end of the lobby stood a boy, Jaden, 17. Skinny, quiet, part-time janitor, still in high school, raised by his grandma. Wore his shirt tucked in like he was going to church. Not work. He reminded me of me. Too much, ma. Whitaker, he said, when he saw me approach. You wanted to see me. I nodded and smiled. I did. He looked nervous, like he thought he would done something wrong. I unwrapped the broom and held it between us. This, I said, built everything you see. He blinked. The building, no. I chuckled. The respect. The policies. The people now holding their heads high. This broom taught me that no matter how low they put you, your worth does not change. He swallowed hard. I am giving it to you. I continued. Not because you need to mop, but because I want you to carry what it represents. He reached out slowly, reverently, like it was made of gold. When his fingers wrapped around the handle, I saw it. The torch had passed. I do not know what to say. He whispered, "Say this." I replied, "That one day, when they ask who gave you your first shot, you will do the same for someone else." Tears welled in his eyes. He nodded. Then, as if the universe had planned it, a group of employees exited the elevator nearby. One of them a CFO, sharp suit and all paused, turned, and said, "Hey Jaden, You good for lunch today? He smiled shyly. Yes, madam. Good. You are sitting with us. The group walked on. Jaden turned back to me. They never used to even see me. He said, they do now. I replied, and more importantly, you do. We shook hands man to man. He walked off, broom in hand like it was a sword of honor. I stood in that lobby a moment longer. And then, slowly, I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out Gloria's cloth still embroidered, still folded just right. I placed it on the front desk. Beside it, a note to those who sweep the unseen corners. Don't wait for the world to hand you power. Build it with grace, then give it away. I stepped outside. The city had not changed, but I had, and inside the building behind me. So had everyone else. Not because I shouted, not because I rose, but because I stayed. I served. I endured, and I forgave, because legacy is not built in offices. It is built in silence, in sweat, in service, and sometimes, just sometimes, it starts with a broom. Elijah Whitaker, the humble janitor everyone ignored for 32 years, quietly became the owner of the very skyscraper he used to mop. After being publicly humiliated by the building's security guard Brett, Elijah did not retaliate with rage. He responded with grace, patience, and unshakable dignity. He fired Brett not in anger, but in principle. Instead of seeking revenge, Elijah transformed the entire building's culture, raising wages for janitors, tearing down executive hierarchies, and turning a place of silent suffering into one of justice and equality. In the end, he passed his old broom to a young janitor named Jaden, proving that legacy is not about status, it is about who you lift up behind you. He did not just buy a building. He rebuilt dignity for everyone inside it. Never judge a person by the role they play in the moment. The janitor you ignore today may be the one who signs your paycheck tomorrow. True power does not need to yell. It listens. It lifts, and it lasts. You do not need a title to lead, and you do not need a suit to build an empire. Grace, humility, and quiet strength will echo louder than any shout. If this story inspired you, do not keep it to yourself. Like if you believe dignity is more powerful than pride. Comment your favorite moment or share how someone once surprised you. Share this story with someone who needs a reminder of their worth. Subscribe for more powerful, heart-moving stories that restore your faith in humanity. Let us make kindness viral. Let us make quiet heroes visible. Let us build a better world, one story at a time.